I'm seriously wondering how many more unknown male DNAs are we going to hear about before this case even gets to trial? Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer: everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only, and just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Let's talk about the DNA. Let's talk about all of the DNA. I'm hoping that this makes it as clear as possible so that people like Nancy Grace cannot keep coming out here and saying stuff like this.
A newly unsealed court filing discloses that investigators found 3 unknown profiles from DNA underneath victim Madison Mogen's fingernails, but testing has not determined who they belong to. The accused quadruple killer has not been confirmed or excluded as a source.
Because it's not true. And we're going to take all of the information that we know so far in the Idaho student murder case when it comes to the DNA profiles and try to get it nailed down as clear as possible. Now, of course, the biggest piece of DNA evidence in this DNA scenario would be the DNA from the knife sheath. They claim that it matches Bryan Kohberger, and even though they are fighting all kinds of other fights in this case, they have never once came out and stated that it was not Bryan's DNA. That has never once been their argument. Their argument against the DNA has been stated in other videos and is not for this one right now, but again, there will be links in the description box if you don't know the basis for their IgG fight. It wasn't until probably a year or so after Kohberger was arrested that we found out there were actually several more unknown male DNA profiles that were found at the crime scene. One of them in particular was found on the handrail of the stairs that leads from the first to the second floor. So this would be the handrail that leads from the bottom floor where Bethany Funk, who apparently has exculpatory evidence for Bryan Kohberger to use as his defense, where she stayed, and the second floor where Dylan Mortensen and Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin were that night. Now, we didn't know the location of this blood sample until very recently, just like we didn't actually know that it was blood until very recently. Now, we knew that there was blood found on the inside of a glove. It's been stated that it's inside the glove more than it's been stated to just have been on the glove. And considering that it's unknown male DNA, I'm going to just assume that they at least tested it against their victim, which would have been Ethan Chapin, and it continued to be an unknown male. So if it really was, regardless, honestly, in or on the glove, in the glove would definitely indicate that there was some sort of injury on the inside and it would have belonged to the person who was wearing it. And in the state scenario, they want to assume that that's just the person who committed these crimes. And unlike what Chris McDonough wants to tell people, that glove was not found whenever he showed up and saw one laying in the snow. That glove that has the blood on it was actually collected on November the 20th per court documents. Chris McDonough wasn't even anywhere near the scene at that point. He didn't show up there and find that glove until about a week later. Now, the most recent information about the unknown DNAs is that there were clippings from Maddie Mogen's left hand that were taken and there was a mixture of DNA found. Now, the part that really aggravates me about this is that they are just assuming, one, that Maddie's DNA is included in this mixture, and B, they're just guessing that it could be Maddie and Kaylee because of how they were found together, and one unknown person, or it could be only Maddie's DNA and 2 unknown people. If you go through the document itself, it literally states that this is just an assumption, a hypothesis. Why do we not have a concrete answer for this? Now, when it comes to the defense team not wanting the DNA information about Maddie admitted, it's because, in my opinion, they want to admit it themselves. The state is the one who is claiming that the information about this DNA was only included in the grand jury information because it's technically exculpatory to Bryan Kohberger. We also find out that further independent testing done by the defense team excluded Bryan Kohberger from being a contributor whatsoever. So again, when Nancy Grace says crap like this,
See, in my mind, if I were a defense attorney, which would never happen, I would be running up and in front of the courthouse, back and forth with a big banner saying inconclusive, inconclusive. There's DNA under the victim's fingernail, and it can't be proven to be my client. It can't be proven to be my client.
The accused quadruple killer has not been confirmed or excluded as a source.
I don't know how she can sleep at night knowing she's telling a bold-faced lie. Now, this portion here was actually really interesting, and I'm trying to determine if I'm reading this correctly. Now, what we're seeing here is the likelihood ratios for the samples, apparently, that came from these clippings of Maddie's left fingernails. But what I'm seeing here is 4 redactions, 4 ratios, 4 statistics, 4 pieces of testing done, not just 3. So who's the 4th one? And if this statement right here means what I think it means, when it talks about these 4 likelihood ratios, it then states the following sentence. All of these individuals, meaning all 4 of these individuals, sit in the same shoes as Mr. Kohberger, meaning these 4 individuals plus Bryan Kohberger. This portion is really confusing, and the reason why the defense put this out is because in the grand jury, there was just a mixture of 3 mentioned, with this inconclusivity mentioned when it comes to Bryan's DNA, but they didn't actually come out and state in the grand jury that it was exculpatory to Bryan. They didn't know that information until they tried to overturn the grand jury indictment, and that was the state's argument. Well, we did you a favor, so why should we overturn it? We told them it wasn't your DNA. That's why we introduced it. There's no reason to overturn something that we did for you. But as you can see, it does make some sort of inference that it had to have maybe been Bryan's, that it maybe actually could be Bryan's, and that's not the case because he's actually been completely excluded. It's considered exculpatory. We've actually been hearing that word a lot in this case when it comes to the defense team, haven't we? Now, again, just because they don't want the state to talk about this or bring this into trial themselves, that doesn't mean that they won't bring it to trial themselves. That's another thing that I see a lot of these mainstream people, especially Disgrace, really trying to get into people's heads that this is literally going to be completely excluded from trial itself. But we don't know that. There would be no reason for the defense team to not present this because Bryan is excluded, because it's not his DNA, and because it's something so intimate to the case, something being of the victim's fingernails, right where that knife sheath was. It's extremely important. And for the defense themselves not to bring it to trial, that would be a huge, huge mistake. So, them, again, not wanting the state to present it, that just means they don't want it presented to the jury incorrectly. They want it presented the right way. The state has already proven that they can't be trusted to give the right information. They showed that during the grand jury. Once someone shows you who they are, believe them. Something else that we found out about these unknown male DNAs is that they were basically just forgotten about. Once the feds gave Moscow PD Bryan Kohberger's name on December the 19th, it wasn't until after that date, according to Payne, who testified this in court, that they got the reports back about these profiles. And because, again, they had this name from the feds, they just decided to ignore it. They just put it off to the side, basically just put a pin in it and never went back to it. That's completely unacceptable. This is a quadruple homicide. Why would you not bring every single unknown DNA profile to complete conclusion? And it's ridiculous to me that they tried to use CODIS as some sort of excuse whenever CODIS can run definitely more than one profile at a time. It doesn't just take information out either. So their excuse, according to people who use the CODIS system, is complete crap. On top of that, if you sent this one off for some sort of genealogical workup, why wouldn't you have done the same thing? If you were going to use CODIS as your excuse to not take the testing of these male profiles further to actually find out who they were, why wouldn't you at least have let Othram do a little bit of work? I mean, seriously, there's no excuse for this. Something else that we have also very recently found out is that there was a main suspect along with those 2 unknown DNAs and the information about Bryan Kohberger. Now, remember, we heard a long time ago that they were surveilling someone who smoked cigarettes. They were surveilling the person for reasons unknown to us, and they were just waiting for this person to flick their cigarette butt so they could take it and they could do DNA testing. Now, we have no clue who this was. We honestly don't really know if it was a male or a female. They're not really giving any information to that at all. But this is what we do know. They had a main suspect that was not Bryan Kohberger way before they ever got his name. They then got his name on December the 19th via a phone call. And what Payne testified was that it was just the name. There was no, this is the reason why, this is where it came from. It was just, Bryan Kohberger is the man that you should be looking into. It wasn't until the next day, on December the 20th, that they all actually sat down and had a Teams meeting to where the genealogical tree could actually be shown to the investigators. So then after 1219, they get these reports about these unknown DNA profiles, and they still don't do anything. So these two unknown DNA profiles, again, they just put a pin in it, and then all of a sudden they just forget about this main suspect. There was a reason why they were following this person. That shouldn't have just gone away because the feds handed them some name. Everything when it comes to Bryan Kohberger seems to be completely reverse engineered. There's so many things that didn't even matter to Moscow PD until they got this name. That's a subject for another video. And the main reason why this is so important, at least in my opinion, that they had a main suspect and then just forgot about it, is because now the state has filed motions to stop the defense from bringing in any sort of alternate perpetrator evidence. You had a whole main suspect that probably had a lot more backing than the crap that you're trying to tell us now about Kohberger. You also admitted that the PCA itself was a living document that pretty much everybody and their mama could get their hands on as long as they worked for the right people that were actually working the departments working this case. And there were several agencies doing so. Mistakes were made. So many mistakes were made. Nothing in this case makes any sense. And with all of these unknown male DNAs, with all of these unknown DNAs just in general, how can we sit here and just completely say that Bryan Kohberger is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt when you have this much unknown DNA at a quadruple homicide scene that's now been demolished and all the secrets with it? It's just too much. It's just way too much. But I want to know what you guys think about everything. Tell me how you feel about all of this DNA evidence, and how many more do you think there's going to be? Do you think this is it? Or do you think we're going to end up finding out that there's a whole lot more DNA issues than we've already seen? Let me know down in the comments. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already. And please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.
I think I smell a rat.